Hello, my friends. Hope everything is going well in your world today. We are going to be looking at setting up WordPress on your own local development machine today. Yeah, WordPress is one of those technologies that has been around for 20 plus years now, and it is still a extremely popular platform for a lot of hosting, for a lot of applications, themes, plugins, you name it. There's a whole huge ecosystem around working with WordPress. So I thought it would be fun to set up your own local development install for you to easily get started in whatever it is you want to tinker with in WordPress. So normally what someone might do is head to wordpress.org, where we are right now, and we see that we've got a download link there for getting WordPress. And normally you would download the zip file, you would extract it to your favorite place on your hard drive, and then you would set up something like XAMPP. There's a lot of different variations of the local LAMP stack. A bit of a process in terms of installing and configuring on your own local environment, and then you unzip and set up WordPress as part of that. However, today we're going to go through a much easier route of getting into WordPress development with the help of Docker. Yeah, it's going to save everything, save ourselves a whole lot of time. We can easily version control what we're working at, so that if we need to work with a different version of WordPress, we can get started on that, and we don't need to fiddle with configuring or setting up Apache or anything. It'll just be all taken care of for us in our Docker image, and in under 5 minutes, or however long it takes you to cut and paste and run Docker Compose up, you'll have your own local WordPress development environment. I think this would be really cool. So first things first, if you haven't set up Docker on your own local machine, then be sure to get the desktop client for your platform from the docker.com website. Okay, so next we're going to create a folder in our workspace. I'm just going to create it right on my desktop, but feel free to create that folder wherever you want. And I'm just going to call this one Docker Local WordPress. Go into the directory, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. So what we're going to get started with is a simple docker-compose.yml file. So we're in the file now, so let's get started. So we're going to be looking at using version 3.1. You can pretty much use anything greater than 3. And we're going to be creating 3 services in our Docker file. We're going to be creating one. Let's just lay them out right here. We're going to be creating one for a database. We'll be using MariaDB for the database, which is the same one that most of the LAMP stacks use for working with WordPress. And it's even the one that WordPress itself recommends for local development. So we're going to be creating a database service. We are going to be creating a PHPMyAdmin service in order to go in and do any database work once we get WordPress up and running. And then, of course, we'll have the WordPress service. So we're going to have these 3 things. These 3 services, and then we're going to be setting up one volume, and it will be called DB data. So it will just be a volume to store our data. And then we're going to be setting up one network. So I'm just going to be calling this WordPress network, and we're just going to be using driver bridge. And now let's go back up and fill in our images for our services. So first, let's set up our database. Okay, so we are going to bump up the memory limit a bit of this image. We're going to set it to a little over 2 gig. And then for our image, we're going to be using the MariaDB 10.6.4 focal. And for our restart flag, we'll set it to unless stopped. And then there will be some ports that we need to expose. So let's go ahead and expose 3306 outside of this image as 3306. Make it nice and easy. And we are going to be referencing an environment file in .env, which we will create shortly. We will then set up our volumes to just be DB data, which we've already defined below. And we'll use a var lib, we'll just call it a MySQL. I know we're using Maria, but this is a sort of a generic volume name that we can make use of. And then for networks, we're going to reference the network that we defined below, the WordPress -network. So let's go ahead and create that environment file. Now what we want to do is create some environment variables that we can use, that we can reference in our Docker Compose file, but we never want to store any actual secret words, passwords, all those super magical secret stuff. We never want to put that into source control. It is a best practice to not commit that back into Git or any source control anywhere. It should just be in an environment file. So let's go ahead and create a environment variable called MySQL database. And this will be the name of the database for our WordPress itself. And I'm just going to call it WordPress. This is where you could even you can make use of the usual WP underscore, but I'm just going to call it WordPress. And then we're going to create one called MySQL user. And I'm just going to call this WP underscore user. And then MySQL password, it will be WP underscore password. And we need a root password. So let's just create a environment variable for that. And I'm just going to call this root password. Definitely really great passwords. So let's go back to the Docker Compose file. And after the env file, let's go ahead and make use of some of these environment variables that we've just defined. Okay, so under environment, we've got MySQL root password is going to be we're going to pull this one right from the environment file. So all we have to do is use the same environment variable name. And this way we can change it however we want to in the environment, and we don't have to rebuild, recompile, and we don't need to worry about passwords being leaked from GitHub or wherever we put our source code. Okay, so MySQL underscore database, and then the MySQL user will be money sign bracket, squiggly bracket, MySQL underscore user. And then finally, the MySQL password will be equal to money sign MySQL password. Okay, cool. So all that is set up. So our database image is all configured. And let's get down to the PHPMyAdmin. And we are going to add a section called depends on. So we want to make sure that the database finishes first before we reference or before we start up the PHPMyAdmin. And for an image, we're going to be just making use of PHPMyAdmin /PHPMyAdmin. Easy peasy. And we're going to be using the same restart flag. So unless stopped. And for ports, we are going to expose port 8081 and internally into the image, map that to port 80. And we're going to be making use of the same environment file. And for our environment section, it's a little bit shorter. All we need to do is declare a PMA underscore host, and that'll be to database, whatever we called this service right up here. And then the MySQL root password is what we'll need, is what the PHPMyAdmin will need. And it'll be, of course, MySQL root password from the environment file. And for networks, we just need to use the WordPress network. WordPress network. All right, looking good. So we don't need to state any volumes because it's just a GUI to the local database, which is already storing its data into var lib MySQL. And finally, let's go to the WordPress definition here, service definition. So it also depends on database. And for an image, we are going to be using the latest WordPress 6.2.2.2-Apache. And for our restart, we're going to again use unless stopped. And for ports, we are going to open up port 8080, and which will internally map to port 80 into the image. So up here for PHPMyAdmin, we're mapping port 8081 to the internal port 80. And so down here, port 8080 to the internal port 80. That's a lot of 80s. And for the environment file, again, the same env. And then for our environment variables that we'll need, let's see, we've got a WordPress DB host that we'll have to declare, and that'll be the database. We're referencing the database image, port 3306, and then the WordPress _DB name environment variable will just be our MySQL _database environment variable, and the WordPress _DB user will be the MySQL user. Let's give that some more room here. And then the WordPress DB password will be equal to the MySQL _password. Okay, very cool. Now let's set up our volumes. We're going to start with /. We're going to map that to /var/www/html, and I'll show you what happens. I'll show you what happens when we start this up. And then for networks, again, we're going to make use of the WordPress network. And okay, so we should be good to go. So if you're still new to using Docker, all we have to do to get the images up and running, I will just open up here's my Docker desktop client, and you can see we don't have anything running yet. There's no containers. Can we blow that up? Oh, we can. Okay. So there's no containers, there's no images, no volumes, nothing is currently there. So let's get that. Let's change that right now. We are going to run docker space compose space up. And so you'll see it'll go through our, okay, so it'll go through, it looks a little messy. It should look a little cleaner on your console. I don't know why it looks like this, but what it's doing is it's pulling down the three services that we've declared in the YAML file, the WordPress database and PHPMyAdmin, and then it will proceed to configure each of those based on the flags and parameters that we've set up. So let's get this all up and running. So everything got created okay. It's now going through, and I'll try and scroll back. Hopefully there's not too many. Okay, so if we go into the Docker desktop container, we've got our main Docker local WordPress container running with the individual images running within it. And you can see here that we've got our ports, 8081 and 3306 for the database, and 8080 for WordPress itself. And then we've got our images up and running here, and then our single volume, which is our DB data. Okay, so if we go to our complete WordPress has been successfully copied to /var/www/html, which is an internal path into the volume that we've specified. But what we're going to see is I'm going to open up a new command prompt here, an ls of the folder. You can see that we've got all of the files of WordPress along with the folders. So our admin section is basically to run just the admin for our WordPress site, our content, and our includes. If you unzip the WordPress download, then this is exactly the same setup that you'll have. Now, let's go to I'm going to show you a trick here to clean this up a little bit, but we'll do that shortly. Let's now test out these running containers. So what we're going to do first is go to localhost 8080, which should be our WordPress image. And you can see that we're presented with our WordPress install, which is it's a beautiful installation because it's literally 2 clicks. So let's choose English and continue, or whatever language you would like to select. And for a site title, I'm just going to call mine default site. Username, it can be anything, admin. And for password, it gives you a strong password to start off with. So just cut and paste that and put it somewhere else for now that you can easily reference. And then you just need any email here. And so I just use like admin@test.com. It really doesn't matter what kind of email address you put in for now. And then install WordPress. So it will do its thing. And you can then click the login button. And let's see, for our username was admin and our password was this. Let's log in. And you can see that we are in the dashboard of our own local WordPress container. That is so amazing. Did you see how fast this was? This was like, it took me longer to explain everything. If you just cut and paste what we went through in the Docker file, then you'll be up and running in no time. So let's go ahead and let's click on the post and let's just edit the Hello World post. And we'll just update the title to Hello WordPress. And we'll hit the update button. Okay, and then if we go back to the dashboard here to home, then we should be able to, let's see, visit site. So on the home icon, go down to visit site, open it in a new tab, and the site should open up for us. And we've got Hello WordPress showing up. So we know this is our local site. We know things are being saved. Let's now go into our PHPMyAdmin. So if we go to localhost port 8081, and welcome to the PHPMyAdmin shows up. And let's see, now here is where we use the same environment variables from our env file. So this was wp_user and wp_password. So that's all we need to use. So wp_user and wp_password. Hit login, and this just looks a little funny because I've blown it up. I've zoomed in so much on this, but you can see that we've got our WordPress database and all of our WordPress tables are showing up. And let's see if we click on the posts. And I think if we scroll down, yeah, that's it. Okay, so we can see that we've got our Hello WordPress. Let's blow this up a bit. We've got our Hello WordPress post here. So it's showing up correctly in our PHPMyAdmin tool, and we know that we are referencing our site, and everything is pretty cool. Again, this took very little time to set up. We've got everything up and running, WordPress, MariaDB, and PHPMyAdmin, no problem at all. Okay, so to stop your Docker container running, let's go back into our command prompt here, and we're in that same folder that we were in. Let's just type in docker compose down, and it will go ahead and stop everything. So back on that first tab where we started it up, it should, there we go. It should show that we've exited everything. So the container and images are all shut down. So what I want to do though is notice how we have sort of all of the installation files from WordPress in the same folder as our Docker Compose file, and along with the admin folder and content and includes, and all of this, okay, not all of this, a lot of this is unnecessary for working on any WordPress development. You're never going to be touching the WP admin folder, for example. You're never going to be going into the WP includes folder. You're really only going to be concerned about the WP content folder, which contains all of the plugins and the themes. And that's typically where any WordPress developer will spend 99% of their time. To that extent, we can update our Docker Compose file so that we only copy the WP content stuff locally. We only mirror the WP content folder. So it makes it much easier to track in Git. So if you're working on a plugin or if you're working on a theme, then it's much easier to track instead of needing to check in the entire WordPress source code itself, which then keeps you separated from the specific WordPress version. So it makes it a little bit easier to port to newer WordPress versions as they increase or as they release. Sorry, not increase. Okay, so how do we do this? So let's go back into our Visual Studio Code and let's delete all of these files apart from our Docker Compose file. So we're going to recreate everything. Okay, we're going to delete the WPAdmin folders, the WP content, WP includes. So all we're left with is our Docker Compose, our .env, and our Docker ignore. And let's go into our Docker client here, and we've got our containers. We don't have anything running, so nothing will show up in our containers. Let's get rid of our images, so let's just delete them. And let's go into our volumes, and let's delete those as well. There. So now we got a fresh slate again. And let's go back into our Docker Compose YAML file. And the key here is this line right here, our volume. So what we're doing is we're copying all of the WordPress installation into our root, folder that we're currently running in. That's why all of the WordPress stuff ends up in the same folder as our Docker Compose file. So let's change this to be, we only want the WP content folder. Update this volume path to only copy the WP content folder locally and map it to what's going to be inside the image under /var/www/html/WP content, where that's what we're going to mirror. So we've got that all set up. Let's go ahead and save it. And let's start everything all over again. That's the only change we have to make. So we've got our startup messages, and then you can see in our local folder, we've got just the WP content folder showing up with our plugins, themes. So let's go back into the browser and reinstall WordPress. Now, the fact that we're getting this far into the setup means that everything is running correctly, and we're in. And you can see in our plugins folder, we've got the default WordPress plugins that come with the install. And for our themes, we've got the default themes that come with WordPress. And so again, just all we need to worry about is now the WP content folder locally when we want to make changes, when we want to do any plugin development or theme enhancements that we want to work on. Then that's all we have to worry about. We don't have to track the rest of WordPress core. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed what we went through today. I think it was a lot of fun and really useful, and hopefully gets you going within 5 minutes on setting up and running your own local WordPress development environment. If you liked what you saw, please share the video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notifications when I drop future videos. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day, everyone. Peace.